Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of Paravine's Into the Rift. I'm your host, Daniel Dracos, and joining me tonight is our Brazilian LoL expert, Emily Rand, John A. Crichton? Got it. Stephen Nguyen, and our special guest for the evening is Thomas Fly Mihilov from Roccat, the general manager. So, welcome, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight?
Not bad. Freezing.
Freezing?
Quite good.
There you go.
Yeah, pretty cold, man.
All right, so the first
thing... It's freezing. Here it's fine.
Good. I'm glad it's warm in your house and that you're not suffering on our account. That's excellent. So the first thing I want to talk about tonight is obviously there's been a lot of roster news recently. It's still the off season and a lot of teams are still bouncing around their rosters. And the first thing I want to talk about is Cyanide leaving Fnatic, and then pretty much he said that he wants to retire, although that he does still kind of want to stay in the scene. So was anyone surprised by this? How did we feel about Cyanide making this announcement?
Anyone wants to start or me?
You can start if you want, man.
Okay, yeah, I go. Well, to be honest, Cyanide and Package, since both of them left together, wasn't a surprise. It's been rumored for quite a while. From what we've heard from people like Richard Lewis, Torin, etc., the team himself had problems for years with Fnatic, so it doesn't really come as a surprise. And the other thing is for Cyanide actually retiring, why not? He retires in a moment that he cannot catch up to the meta that much. A lot of the people started, at least the community started turning negative towards him. So I think the moment that he decided to retire is really good. And from what we've seen already the last days, he's producing content videos as such for the people from perspective. So yeah, we can see him is still in the community, but obviously he's not going to be playing anymore.
Yeah, and for me, I was excited that he left when he did. I've always loved Cyanide as a jungler, and as far as I think because he left before the community had a huge negative effect on him, and before he really let his play slip too far away, because he did acknowledge that his play was slipping. He left at a good time because he kind of preserved his legacy. As a player, and he at least went out knowing with a pretty solid record despite his maybe not so great performance in season 4. He went out before things got really, really bad, which is something we don't see players really often do. A lot of times players will retire once when they're forced to retire, basically when they're dropped from teams.
Well, that retirement right now lets him actually work with the community further, because he leaves at a moment that the community still trusts in his opinion, in his decisions. So they're actually going to follow him and try to learn from him. While if you wait until you wash up completely before you leave the scene, people are not going to trust you that much, follow you, and check on what's your opinion on the certain things.
So
I think, yeah.
So are we pretty much in agreement that this was the best career choice for Cyanide?
Yeah, I mean, just reading his statement, it just seemed like he was, he even acknowledged that he was a bit burnt out this entire season, and tried to get it together, and he kind of fell short of the expectations that he set for himself. So I think it was definitely the best decision for him to make, and it does come at a good time.
Okay, but let's move on to xPeke, a player who has still been playing really well, maybe not as great as he has in the past, but still definitely performing as a mid laner, and still, I would say, a competitively viable mid laner. Do you think he made the right choice leaving Fnatic? Obviously, he's pursuing that dream of his, but do you think down the road, is this the right career choice for him?
Well, I mean, if this is what he wants to do, I think choosing what you want to do, I don't know if he was miserable or anything on Fnatic, but if this is what he wants to do, he should do it. And it's worth taking a chance, making your own team, and then to not do it and take the safe path and then always wonder, what if I didn't, right? So, I mean, I don't know if this how well it'll work out for him. I don't really know his team too well, Origins. But I don't know. I am willing to believe in it. So.
Okay.
As far as I know, does anyone know his team? Like, I know people are trying to figure out
think
things
it's been
from
revealed.
Silhouettes, but yeah, I don't think his team's been actually revealed yet.
Is this one of those moments?
Yeah, I'm just gonna smile over here. No,
So-
I have my guesses. When you think about it, the rumors has been Niels. I see other option Taps is free on the scene, so it should be one of the two. It depends who gets, who Fnatic gets, who xPeke manages to get. I also could see someone like Mithy going to that team. Especially after we've seen he didn't actually join Superhot crew. And considering, unless Alliance turns to him in the last moment, I don't see any better options for Mithy to go to. And I think it's going to be a good option for xPeke, for his team. And especially if you go with Taps, you're going to have Taps and Mithy again, the old Lemon Dogs bot lane. So why not? And for other guesses for jungle, you have, unless he goes to RNI as a fellow Spanish person, you have Amazing, you have Dexter, which are free right now. The earlier one didn't join Super Hot Crew, as we saw. So yeah, he has the options. And for top lane, I'm actually really curious who it might be. I saw a couple of Alexich suggestions, but I don't think Alex is gonna live Rock's Kiss like 2 weeks after he joined them. And I'm not sure how much trust xPeke and those are gonna have in Alexich being a top lane after all the switches of him between the lanes.
And it's true, and I think Alexich is one of those prime examples of a player staying around maybe too long and kind of like sullying his good name from his time on Gambit, where he was sort of revered as one of the best mid laners in the world. But it does seem like he has a lot of options. So I think a lot of people were speculative as to like, what possible team could he assemble in such a short period of time and expect a good result. But from what you're saying, it does seem like there's a lot of good options in EU as far as free talent goes. And it may not be, the best roster at first, but he does have this opportunity to make a pretty solid team. From what we've seen of xPeke, do you think he has the personality? Does he have the talent to kind of like put a team together? Does he have the resource? I mean, we know he has the resources as a professional player. We can assume that he's made a sizable amount of money. But outside of that, do you think he has the personality where he could put together and manage a team professionally, or is he going to look for outside help?
I don't think he's going to look to manage the team himself. He has had, until even in Fnatic, the last year and a half, I believe, he has had his own company in Spain, managed by a couple of people. He's been, I believe, working on himself as a brand and everything for quite some time. He has the following, and contrary to what everyone thinks what happened with Ocelot, and I think what they think is going to happen with xPeke, those two people, I believe, do not put the money from themselves. Like, they have the following, they have the PR options to actually go to a company and say, hey, I'm making a team. Do you want to sponsor it? I have 500,000, close to 1 million followers on Facebook and Twitter. So, yeah, do you want that promotion? So, yeah, I think he's going to have enough sponsors, enough companies actually supporting him to make an actual competitive team. And towards his skill, we saw at Worlds that he still has it. Like at Worlds before that in Europe, we saw that xPeke is actually a really good player. From what I know from his teammates and himself, it's during the split when he looked weak and everything, it's just him not having the motivation to dedicate his whole time on only playing. He wanted to a little bit relaxing. I believe he was a little bit burned. The girls were distraction, etc., etc. But I believe he still has it.
Okay, so when he forms his... Oh, sorry, you can go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, do you think that him forming his own team would, like, help him regain that motivation, or...
I think you need to play with people that you enjoy playing the game with when it gets to that point, when you start to lose motivation in the competitive scene, it's good to surround yourself with people that you're friends with as such. So if he builds a team around people that he enjoys playing with, then there's no reason that he can't like reignite that fire as such, you know?
And the other thing is he's going to be playing for his own brand from now on. So I believe that's going to reignite him and motivate him to actually play again competitively, really on a high level, because it's his own thing and he wants to prove people and develop it and make it look good and work good. So yeah, I think he's going to be good.
I'm excited for this team. I know there's been a lot of dispute about the name and the name not being the best, but I honestly think that's a pretty fickle issue to bring up. I mean, it does affect the brand, but I think more importantly, like now that you've talked about the talent that is available, I am excited for this team. I'm expecting a lot for them. If this team does well, do you think we have like another potential media empire on our hands? Do we have another Ocelot? Do we have another like Reginald with TSM? Is this the kind of player who has enough of a fan base that he can build something like in its entirety?
I don't think he's been as public, like in the public eye, as Ocelot used to be. Like Ocelot used to like stream every day, and that's how he built his fan base. Like xPeke has a lot of fans, but I don't see him like putting himself out there every day, you know, like building that hype and stuff like that. Whereas Ocelot was kind of like he involved his fans in the build up to gamers too, like quite a lot. Whereas I've not really seen that from xPeke, you know, he's been quite in the shadows.
He doesn't. Sorry for interrupting. He doesn't have the same connection with the people yet, at least. But I believe xPeke has the more community control. Because I give an example. I was at DreamHack Bucharest, which had no League of Legends event at all. Like they had a Riot booth with some community stuff, but no event. So the mass was Dota 2 fans and StarCraft fans. And in a Dota 2 tournament with Toby1 Kenobi and Come With Me, a professional player, someone backdoors in a Dota 2 match and they say, hey, they're doing an xPeke in Dota, which hates League of Legends, pretty much. So I think with that backdoor movement, with his sexiness and the way he represented himself, pretty much the xPeke thingy, I think he has the control over the community. And he can be even bigger than also what he did. But again, that's a big thing about him. Okay, the first split, he's going to have the attention and everything he wants. But if his team doesn't qualify for the LCS, that's slowly going to be decreasing. Because LCS is watched by the new people that come in right now in the esports scene. It's going, it's the attention from LCS, it's pretty much all the new community. And even if he has the old one, people are going to stop watching him, stop following him, and the new people are not going to be going to him unless he's in the LCS.
Okay. Well, I think you made some valid points there for sure. And I'm, like I've been saying continuously, I'm excited to see what he ends up doing. And I did not know about the Dota 2 xPeke backdoor, and that is absolutely fantastic. And I think that alone is probably enough credibility to say that he could build an entire community just off of his fan base alone. I mean, obviously people know who he is, and if he's still a really good player and he still continues to perform, I can see him putting together an excellent challenger lineup and qualifying for the EU LCS. But moving forward to other kind of LCS news, we did just see today Nukeduck and Mithy are unbanned or are being unbanned soon. They will be available for the split to come, I guess, is the big news. Despite the fact that we did think it was originally only going to be Nukeduck, but it now turns out that they're both unbanned. How do you guys feel about this? How does this affect EU? Which teams might look to pick these players up? What can we expect? How do we expect this to affect EU or any other region for that matter?
I'm trying to stare at Thomas through the camera.
He's so giddy about this. Well, first of all, these two players being back puts a lot of talent back in the EU talent pool, which is always a good thing. And second of all, that does show that Riot is always willing to give players multiple chances to come back in. I'm not going to bring up any examples of other players who are currently banned right now, but there's always... it's not like there's an end of a career if you get banned for at one point, right? Like Dominate came back after a year or two. You play as on Curse, so it's just a good thing overall, I think.
Well,
I mean,
from what I
these
know
guys.
yeah, go on. Sorry.
Okay. These guys, like, what you need to take into consideration is, like, these guys are, like, top tier in Europe as well. So it's not just, like, 2 players into the pool. It's 2 of the best players at that position. So, like, for instance, if you look at any, like, who was the best support? Like, Lemonation. Imagine Lemonation wasn't in LCS last year. Like, that's pretty unfathomable, you know? Like, what the hell? And now he's coming back. That's huge, man. It's just people don't see it in the same light. And obviously, with a top tier mid laner, I don't know, like who was top in NA last year.
Bjergsen, I guess.
Bjergsen, yeah, go Bjergsen. Imagine Bjergsen was out for the LCS split. Like, you'd be like, holy shit, man, Bjergsen's coming back. This is amazing. It's just because there's not, I don't know, it's like, if you had to compare it that way, because it is very similar, then I think there would be a lot more hype in the NA scene about those players coming back, you know? So I don't see why it isn't that way with you.
Well, to be honest, like when you look, as you said, is the talent slow returning to Europe, because you have Bjergsen left, Amazing left, Dexter left at some point, Santorin left, and countless others. So it's people left, people got banned, and this year we had, like, I'm not saying we didn't have the talent pool in Europe, because we still had it. You had Alliance, you had the SK, which came out of nowhere, to be honest, at least compared to the beginning of the season. So right now we have Nukeduck and Mithy returning, we have Amazing returning, Dexter returning, we're implementing new talent. Rio is in Europe, Horo is in Europe, some solo queue people are coming, like Niels, like those. So Europe talent pool has grown quite big compared to last season, and makes me really excited actually for the new LCS. It's going to be really interesting, and especially with 10 teams, considering most probably H2K is going to join LCS if they don't fail at 1 again, which brings Febiven, Odwamne inside. So we're going to see a lot of talented people in Europe, and it's going to be way, way more interesting and competitive than last year. And this time NA.
EU is better than NA, I think is the message he was trying to communicate there, at least for this season to come. We'll see. I'm not convinced. I mean, Unicorn's a lover, and so I'm a little convinced because I love me some Power of Evil, but we'll see. We'll hold off on a firm conclusion. So moving forward from that, one of the things I want to talk about is Ryu coming to Roccat for IEM Cologne, and the decision there. And lucky us, we happen to have someone who has a lot of insight into the decision-making process on Roccat. Steven, tell us what do you... Never mind. Fly, of course. Please, let it talk to us a little bit about Ryu on Roccat. And
we got quite lucky with Ryu because we were really... Like, first of all, we didn't expect the spot to come to us after losing to Gambit, even though it was only with 3%. But still, we didn't expect the invite. When it came, we didn't really had good options who to come with us. Like the obvious ones we tried to get was Alexic, for example, even before the votes, because he could obviously bring us some votes extra. But sadly, he had offers from a couple of different teams. He wanted to spend the holidays with his family and everything, so he couldn't come to IEM. So Alexic wasn't really an option anymore. You had some people that dropped out, like Need God Bro, Moops as options, and come on, compare those people to the level of Rio. A lot of people are flaming how bad he was on Millennium, etc., etc. I don't think so. I think Rio played amazingly on... Rio and Horo had really good games. Maybe Horo was stage struck a little bit in some of the matches we watched, but I think in general, both of them played really good. And from what I've seen him playing on Super Hot Crew, it's quite damn impressive, to be honest. So I think Ryu is getting a lot of shit. Sorry for this, but a lot of shit for nothing. I think he's still a top tier mid laner. I believe he already has offers from even top Chinese and Korean teams. So what does that say? People that have the coaching stuff and everything behind them are saying he's good, and come on, the community is downgrading him so much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess they're gonna see at IEM Cologne how he plays, really.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the community, it's kind of ignoring the fact that Ryu just spent like half a year playing jungle over in Korea, and is moving back to mid lane. That takes time, and he
Am
was
I the only one walked?
Yeah, and it's just going to take time for him to get to the same level, and I still think he's just as good as a player as he was before.
Yeah, and I think that the league community especially has a huge focus purely on results. So if a player loses, that player is bad, regardless of how well that player did within the game. And we lost Fly there for a second, but I'm sure he'll be back shortly, although our overlay may be a little bit
I can adjust that. No. But yeah, like it doesn't help for Ryu that his most well-known moment to the Western League community is the outplay versus Faker. I mean, first of all, wasn't Faker like an entire item and a half out of him? It's unfair to the rest of Ryu's performance that people focus on that one game, that one moment.
Yeah, and no, go ahead, Emily.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I'm a huge Ryu fan. Like, I've been a Bullets fan for quite some time, and I think it's weird because even like, I know Thorn did that whole video about like rewriting Ryu's history, but like even when I'd speak about him in season 3 before Champion Summer, I would always be like, oh man, like I remember there was this one game where somehow TF made it through, and TF was always like permabanned in Korea.
Right?
Yeah, it was ridiculous, and he just stomped everybody. And I was like, oh man, like look at how awesome Ryu is. And I was watching it with someone else, and they're like, oh yeah, but he's not as good as like all these other Korean mids. And it's weird because I think because the Bullets were always known for being such a like heavily team focused, like they're kind of like, oh, you know, it's what they do as a team more so than like individual star players. I think for whatever reason, even when he was like at his best, I always felt like people were downgrading Ryu for whatever reason. I don't really know, because like whenever I'd bring up like, oh man, Ryu's awesome, people would be like, oh, but he's not as good as Dade, he's not as good as Speaker, like he's not as good as Ambition, all these other mids in Korea. And I don't know, that always made me really angry because I love Ryu. And I think
he competed
awesome.
Daily with those people, and those people are saying he's still good. And yeah, you can't say. And IEM on top of that is his event. A couple of months ago, it's not that far away in the time he won IEM Katowice, IEM Worlds, by destroying Fnatic in the final. And he was big part. Yeah, he was big part of that win. He literally played by himself pretty much in that match to some extent. So
his Orianna saved them a ton of times in those matches.
Yeah, and I don't know who told you that Ambition was crushing on him though, but they were wrong. That guy feeds more than anybody I've ever seen in KR.
Well,
the first blood curse.
Season 3, I know. In season 3, he was known as, like, whenever I'd bring him up, people would be like, oh yeah, but there's Ambition, there's Dade there, and obviously there's only one Faker. Like, can we just agree? Like, Faker is
his own tier of
the
player.
best player in this game. Period. Like, not just the best mid, the best player.
I always thought it was silly when people were like, oh, he's not Faker. Well, okay. Is there really a sentence where you can say that someone's better than Faker right now?
No.
Yeah.
In terms of individual performance, I don't think so.
But that being said, I feel like one of the things that every region does and how we decide who the best mid laners in the world are is we don't look at the best region and look at their top 5 players. We look at the top 2 in every single region. And I think that's a lot of the reason why Ryu does get so much flack, is because he was never really a top 2 Korean mid laner, but, you know, people like xPeke and Froggen have always been really good, and, you know, Bjergsen and whoever else is good in NA, you know, and that's the people that tend to get revered for being good players, despite the fact that if you put these players against each other in an international tournament, like Ryu would crush pretty much everyone but the Korean mid laners.
There was a time that Ryu was actually top 2 after Faker. Before Faker actually started coming in, and when he started coming in the beginning, it was Faker and Ryu pretty much at that. And come on, we all know the big outplays between Faker and Ryu, and not a single match. We've seen it match after match after match.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also think that one thing that, like, I don't want to dwell onto this, is kind of a tangent, but in those finals, like, both of those teams just pushed each other to such a high level of play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, without Ryu, Faker wouldn't be pushed that hard. Like, and I guess that's something that I think a lot of people forget. They just see, oh, Faker outplayed Ryu, but like Ryu was the one that kept pushing him to that level. Like, you need kind of a rival or someone like close to your level to continuously push you to greater heights, and that's what Ryu did.
And I think, Ryu's history aside, since we've been on this tangent for a little bit, because I think it is important that we mention those things. No, it's important because I think there are a lot of people who think that Ryu is shit, and I think that is wrong. I think Fly was right to say that, and it's good that we discuss it here because people like need to know the reasons why this guy is being picked onto a team like Roccat, who has an established record, and it's because he is good, and he has been good in the past, and he will continue to be good, hopefully. But my main question is, how is he playing on the team so far? I assume you guys have had him in scrims. I don't know if he's at the house or anything like that. But, how do you feel about him on the team? Has he been performing? Do you have great expectations for IEM Cologne with this lineup?
We're actually, everyone right now is home. We're vacation. We have no gaming house right now. We're getting, did I drop the call?
Mm-mm.
Yep.
It's all you.
Maybe. Yeah, am I back?
Yeah, you're here.
You're back.
Yeah. Sorry, my internet is a little bit fucked up tonight. Where was I?
No gaming house right now.
We don't have a gaming house right now since we're moving from Cologne to Berlin, and everyone is home vacation. We've been practicing from home. With Ryu, we've played 2 days until now, pretty much. And both days we have winning ratios versus top LCS teams in scrims. So I have really high hopes of Cologne. To be honest, my personal goal is actually winning the event. But yeah, I'm happy with him. Like, he's not perfect. I feel like he's still a little bit shy on letting go and just talking freely between the team, but that's partly because he hasn't even met the guys in person, and his whole communication is via TeamSpeak. And to be honest, even players that have perfect English would have had trouble adapting to a team like ours, because in our team, we don't stop talking. The whole time in TeamSpeak, you have non-stop communication going on, people giving all sorts of information and what movement can happen and everything else. And yeah, he just feels a little bit suppressed yet. But the last games, especially after today's scrims, he started opening up, making calls, shouting stuff, being amazed of Jankus doing a play, for example, et cetera, et cetera.
And that's exciting to hear. I'm glad to hear that he's kind of getting comfortable or getting more comfortable in EU as a region, and I would really like to see him stick around. And I know you guys can't confirm, and I know this is kind of an audition for him as to whether or not he will make it onto the team, but do you think he will stay in EU, and do you think this is a good spot for him, and do you think he fits well in Europe?
I really think it's going to depend. A big part of it is going to depend on how he performs at IEM. To be honest, I think he has the options for Europe, hopefully, and I'll be really happy to see him stay. And who knows, maybe on Roccat. I'm just smiling.
No, neither confirming or denying anything.
I don't know.
Discussion,
I think he's gonna stay in Europe, but I don't know where.
Okay,
that's fair. Anyone else have anything they'd like to talk about as far as Ryu going to Roccat and Ryu as a mid laner on Roccat before we move on?
Can we just take a second to go a year back in time, and then have this discussion and how we would never think this would happen? Like, this would have been unthinkable.
This is I would have said, what is wrong with you, Ryu? Why are you doing this? This is a horrible decision. You're so fantastic in Korea. There's no money in Europe. Why would you do this? You're so.
Well, if we're taking this discussion a year back, I just want to be like, why is everyone going to China?
No. For the first part, for the skill, why would he come over to Europe when all the best teams are in Korea? The best players are in Korea. That I can agree about. But Europe always, and NA always had more pay than Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Like Korea has always been over exaggerated for the pay that they have. They have always been on wall salary. It's like, from what I heard, it's only rumors, nothing confirmed, but even Faker was less paid than most of the European players after he won the World Championship.
That's a little disconcerting, but I guess that would justify Ryu coming over. Although I don't know. I'm not a pro player, and I don't really know the competitive drive there. So maybe the drive would be to stay in Korea. But I guess if there is more money in EU, then that would be a reason for him to come over.
And from what I've talked to him, he wants to play in the LCS. I don't think it's about the money. He just wants to play in the LCS.
That's great. It's good that he has that motivation, and it makes me really excited to see. And I imagine that any team looking for a mid laner, Roccat or otherwise, would be happy to pick up Ryu. And also, of course, they are siding with the community on this one and saying that his play is shit. He's bad. He's never been good.
I don't think any professional player or analyzer or a coach or a manager ever said Ryu is bad. I think it was only the community. Like from tweets, from talk shows and everything I've seen, everyone from the professional perspective of the whole community is actually saying he's good, he has potential, he just needs to work on his communication and his English. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is our other Korean player who has recently come to Europe, and obviously the whole Millennium fiasco kind of took him out too. But now Horo has been announced as a part of Super Hot Crew, and Super Hot Crew is now Meet Your Makers. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about this. One thing to keep in mind is that their head coach is Last Shadow, a very outspoken individual within the community, has been noted as a pretty solid coach. I'm curious as to how this is going to work out. I know Fly has a little bit of insight as to how they've been performing in scrims, but before we go to their actual in-game performance, how do you feel about the decision to pick up Horo?
I feel like compared to the players...
Did we just lose him?
And I think we just lost you there, Fly. I don't know if you're...
Yeah, he just lost. We'll get him back. I just think it's an interesting pickup. I don't think it's a bad pickup. I just mean that Horo hasn't had as much spotlight as other Koreans. He was on SKT T2 with Reaper's team originally. Mm-hmm. And since then, they did well initially, and then they kind of flopped for a bit. And then they let go everyone on T2 except for Horo, so that was interesting. So he obviously seems to have the quote-unquote potential. But I think it's a good risk to pick up Horo.
Okay, and Fly, you cut out before you could make your point, but you were about to say something about Horo.
Yeah, I wanted to say you have on Super Hot Crew, you have players that are known to being aggressive, trying to make plays. You have solo queue players like Mimar, like Selfie, like Mr. Alice, people that are super aggressive. Combining them with someone like Amazing, from at least what we've seen from his tweets, he was their option before that. Combining with a person like Amazing who plays more utility supportive junglers, I don't think it was a good option in general for playstyle for them. While Horo is a person that goes to the lanes and forces stuff, forces giving advantage to his lanes. He's one of the smart people in the game. He knows when to counter gank, how to move on the map. And from what I know from Jankos, he really likes the playstyle and how Horo plays in general. So, yeah, I think Horo is the way, way better option than Amazing. I don't say Amazing is bad right now or anything, but I just think Horo is the better option in general for MYM.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else have anything they want to talk about as far as Horo's qualifications as a jungler for the team?
No, I mean, for some reason I didn't see, or maybe I'm just not in the right channels or whatever, but I didn't see nearly as much backlash for the Horo pickup than I did for, not really backlash, but I didn't see as much commentary for the Horo pickup as I did for the Ryu one.
And I think a lot
I
of
don't know why that would be.
Steven kind of mentioned it in the fact that he's never really had the spotlight like Ryu has. And
He's never had the hype.
Well, yeah, and Ryu got outplayed in that one play that everybody who plays League of Legends watched. So he must be garbage, right? Because I mean, in probably the greatest, visually the greatest play we've ever seen in League of Legends, he got outplayed. And that's what burns into people's memory. And I think Horo's never had that happen, despite the fact that, like, he died a lot in those matches, and I don't think he played poorly, but he did die a lot. And I think that's one thing that would stick with people. Mm-hmm. He obviously just doesn't have that notoriety within the community that he would get negative attention the same way.
No expectations.
Mm-hmm. So,
and the thing was people were busy flaming on Amazing not making it on a mid-tier team in Europe after leaving TSM.
People just won't leave that kid alone, man.
No one ever gets a break. You're either praised or you're trash talked, and there's absolutely no in between. It feels like, or you're just
being ignored.
I guess, yeah, being ignored in the case of Horo, which may be actually good for him, depending. With Last Shadow on the team, obviously someone who can speak fluent Korean. I imagine that there won't be any communication issues, although from what Fly was saying about Ryu and his English, it doesn't sound like there's too many communication issues there either. But the only ones that are present seem to be related to the fact that he is maybe not so willing to communicate in a team and not quite so comfortable in that team environment. Do you think that Horo will be comfortable in this team environment? Do you think having a Korean-speaking coach will help? How do you feel about the team environment, I guess?
From what I know, Horo's English is really way better than Ryu's, which means his English is quite good. And his communication, I don't think he's going to have problem. About Last Shadow, I'm just going to smile and be quiet about it.
Okay.
Nice.
I really want to know that one. I hate that you have to sit there and neither confirm nor deny anything for that one, because I really want to know.
No,
okay.
It's not confirm or deny. I just can't take that guy serious.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people in the scene actually don't like his coaching style or what he has to offer, I guess. Like, I've heard a lot of people going on the opposite way. Like, the community seems to love him in the way, like his videos and stuff, but I don't know how his team coaching is, so I can't personally comment, but I have heard people saying that they don't enjoy it for whatever reason. So, I don't know. I think as it comes.
Let's say it from a manager point of view. Not a single manager in his right mind will want that kind of drama queen in his team. Not a single one.
Okay.
So you think it's more about what happened with Ocelot rather than
to be honest,
anything else?
Sorry for interrupting. I haven't seen him a single game until now that we've scrimmed versus Super Hot Crew MYM that he has actually spectated the game. So I have no freaking clue how he's coaching those people. And from turning the minions into the bad guys and your minions to the fellow guys, I don't see it as a good coaching. That's not my idea of coaching at all.
Okay. And in this situation, I really don't know that much about LS or his coaching style outside of like the coaching videos that we see on Reddit, which, I mean, solo queue coaching is obviously and
much different.
Completely different. Solo queue, I think, is generally agreed to be not competitive League of Legends in any way, shape, or form. It is mechanical skill practice and absolutely nothing else. So I guess we'll move on just because I don't think that there's enough solid evidence on MYM outside of just talking about Horo to really discuss anything about what we can expect from that team. But I mean,
their
go
support.
ahead.
Their support is interesting pick.
Okay. Well, talk to us a little bit about their support. I actually have no idea who it is on Meet Your Makers.
It's Bach, Baah. That's his nickname in game. Until now, I haven't heard anything about him, but from what they explain him, it's just Rales met him in solo queue. He's Danish as Rales, so they can speak their own language between themselves. And Rales felt really comfortable with him. And to be honest, in Super Hot Crew, Rales is the one saying who he plays with in the support role. So it's more of Rales making the decision. He wants that player to play with him.
Okay, well that's pretty solid news. I would like to think, I think finding a support that's going to be compatible with your AD carry seems especially crucial. Bot lane synergy has been noted as like a huge team component, especially in a team as aggressive as Super Hot Crew who like to make those early game plays. So, you know, I'm hoping for a lot here, and I guess we're just going to see what happens at this point. So moving forward, let's talk about our one little bit of NA roster news. CLG officially signs Xmithie and brings back Link for IEM Cologne. Let's talk. Link has not really left the team, and I think there might have been other mid laners speculated, but because we didn't decide on anything new, I would like to focus mainly on Xmithie, former top jungler in NA, and then Vulcan as a team happened, I guess. So let's talk Xmithie.
More XCG happened than Vulcan, but. I guess actually, I'm sorry. I guess Xmithie has had enough time away from the scene to, I guess, recollect himself because I think he was feeling burnt out. I think there was just a lot of issues in the XCGG house. Like I think they said they had really bad internet or something. They couldn't all play at once, or one person streamed and everyone got wrecked. But I don't know. Time away from the scene, taking a break. He's coming back. He could be remotivated. He can reclaim his spot as one of the top junglers as an NA. I don't know. But I think he is one of the better choices, I guess, for jungle, and considering who else is available on NA.
Yeah, and I really haven't seen that much out of him recently, and he dropped out of the Challenger tournament before he got to play any games. Pretty much, we now know to go try out for CLG and to practice on CLG. Do you think it was aggressive for CLG as an organization to make that choice before really getting to see him play too much? Or do you think they just know that Xmithie has that reputation as a good player and has performed very well in the past, and they can make that kind of call on judgment?
Well, I mean, Xmithie's been in the scene for a really, really long time, or at least around an NA. I remember watching streams, and he was there 2-3 years ago. So I know they probably know enough about him. He's probably friends with CLG members. So I guess they just had some scrim tryouts, and they went with the best result.
Yeah, and it seems like they did a lot of tryouts, and it looks like from an outside perspective that they did tryouts for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. So we can assume that this is the best choice for them. But as far as CLG as an organization goes, I don't really know what to expect. Kind of like a lot of these teams that we haven't seen prove themselves. CLG has a lot of new coaching staff and a lot of new things going on, and I think IEM, they're really going to need to prove themselves if they want to be a top team in NA and if they want to keep their fan base. Like, this is pretty huge for them.
Well, to be honest, IEM is not going to be a priority event for them because they're playing with Tinkcard as substitute for that event. Xmithie has visa issues, so he's not actually coming to IEM.
Tinkcard is playing, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Tinkcard's good, but I think you're right. Without a full roster, it does seem pretty hard to practice or take the event too seriously. I mean, we saw Trixzy, however you say his name, play in Battle of the Atlantic last year and kind of underperformed. May have been a poor choice to bring in. And I mean, obviously those matches were just horrible in general. Nien got pretty crushed in the top lane by Soaz, and rough overall. But
no, it wasn't Battle of the Atlantic. It was IEM. It was one of the IEMs. I forget which one.
I thought it was Battle. Well, they played Fnatic and they got crushed. And I remember Trixzy not doing very much, playing Elise and not being very useful.
Yeah, because in Battle of the Atlantic, Cloud9 fought Fnatic.
Okay, that tournament. Yeah. That tournament that's named for the life of me, I cannot remember, and I apologize to everyone for not being able to remember it. But yeah, they got outplayed. And obviously, I don't know why they keep bringing in substitute junglers. I guess it's out of necessity, but we'll see how it goes. But I think with that in mind, Fly, you're probably right that these results aren't too meaningful for them as a team.
And sorry, going back to the previous subject, since we have a question in the chat, was Shadow coach his team by having 3 to 5 streams open it on his screen from all the players? That's utter bullshit. Like, Selfie right now doesn't even have the internet to play properly, not to mention streaming. And if anyone knows how shitty the German internet is, they'll know you cannot stream from a gaming house more than 1 or 2 people. Fnatic had the best internet from all the gaming houses, and they couldn't stream more than 2 people at the same time. So no, it does not coach them that way.
Okay.
Well, so it was IEM Cologne of last year.
Oh. Okay. All right, well, we got an IEM Cologne tradition now, them throwing away their chances with mediocre junglers. Love you, Think Card. You're an excellent challenger player. I don't think you're cut out to be competing internationally in any way, shape, or form. So let's move a little bit forward. One thing I wanted to talk about, since we have Fly as a guest, I want to talk about the future of EU in general. We've been talking a lot about the teams present, a lot about the upcoming teams, but I think a lot of people have been saying, just to use the word a lot as much as possible, that EU doesn't have the same level of coaching staff. It doesn't have that same infrastructure that NA or another region might have. And Fly, how do you feel about this? Do you feel like EU has the same infrastructure, better infrastructure, worse infrastructure? What do you think?
Until now, we didn't. But since now Riot is introducing the coaches, the budgets for coaches, analysts, and extra stuff, I believe a lot of the teams are going to bring in the people. If it's going to be the right people or not, that's a big question. I would suggest, do we want to discuss a little bit about more Europe, like which teams, what chances they have, etc., etc.?
Yeah, I would love to dig deeper into Europe. We don't have a whole ton of Europe experts on this show, so just talking about Europe in general, I think, would be excellent.
Okay, let's go then one by each team. Then I'll keep it as short as I can. So we have Alliance as first from last season. They switched they switched Taps with Reckless. Is that an improvement? Yes, I think Reckless is better than Taps in general. It's gonna change Alliance's style a little bit. I think it's gonna be improvement, but I don't think it's gonna be that huge of an improvement. And to be honest, it's for Alliance for next season. I don't think they're gonna get worse from what they were. I think they're gonna get better, but how much better it's gonna be, big part of who do they have as coach and staff behind them. Since with Alliance it's a little bit more complicated because Froggen himself controls the team and what happens in the team. So it's really hard to find the right stuff for them, a person that they're going to respect, listen to for everything, and not make their own arguments. And to be honest, if you go against the coach, you don't respect him, you don't listen to him, why do you even have a coach over there? That said, Alliance, I see them top 3 again in the next split. But if they're going to be first again, that a lot depends on the other teams.
And I think that's something that from what I've heard, and this is obviously not from experience or from interacting with these teams, a lot of teams seem to have that same kind of issue with authority where players want to make that argument. And a lot of times it's the players who have been around for a long time, like before coaching staff was really a thing in a lot of the regions. And is that something you see a lot? Is players kind of fighting back against the coaching staff, having their own opinions, having their own arguments?
It's slowly changing. Like, people are starting to realize, especially with now, the team realizing they don't own the LCS slots. It's the organization, that the organization controls everything. Players start to realize their places are not safe at any point, so they started slowly listening and being influenced by the coaches. I think that's, as Tap said in one of his Ask FMs, that's slowly starting being the right way to go in Europe, like the actual coaches. And the other thing is, more and more players retire, like Cyanide, maybe Crepple, as we saw Wicked suggest in an interview. So we're going to actually have people with actual knowledge and respect from the players becoming coaches slowly. So I think slowly we're going in the right way.
Okay. Does anyone else have any thoughts about EU and EU infrastructure in general, especially for focusing on Alliance right now? No. Okay. Is there any other teams that you feel like would really benefit from this coaching staff rule and that would that are currently in the LCS that have not in the past really had that level of support staff?
SK has shown they've had it before. I think it's going to be a really crucial point for SK with simply the personalities and the toxicity we say we have in SK. Even though I don't think in scrim environment and team competitive environment they have that much of a problems, but having all those strong personalities in the team, having their sport psychologist over there, their managing coach in the face of Inner Flame, maybe some extra people, it's really crucial for them. I see them starting really, really good in the LCS when the split starts, but that coaching staff behind them is going to be the key if they manage to sustain and be consistent in their performance. And yeah, I for sure see SK as a top 2 team, I believe.
Yeah, and I've been really happy with their performance in the past, and I'm excited for this. John, how do you feel about it?
But SK? Mm-hmm. I reckon they're going to be good, man. Like, regardless, just the people that they have in the team are all really solid players. I don't know how the bottom lane's going to go. I don't know how that's going to meld together or whatever, but I like Forgiven, and I think we'll see them again, at least top 3, you know? Probably top 2, but it's kind of hard to judge everything without seeing it, but on paper it looks dynamite, you know? So, look, I mean, each player on their team is a top 3 player in the region.
Yeah, and so I think that's one of the big trends for preseason. I think is it's a lot of the times it's just speculation, because these preseason games, it's hard to put real value on them when these teams haven't really practiced a lot. And obviously, like for a lot of these teams, we haven't even seen their new rosters come together, and for a lot of teams, they don't even have a final roster. So just speculating. Personally, I really am just a big SK fan in general. So of course I'm going to speculate them into the top 3, but I don't know that much about Forgiven or Fox, formerly What the Fox. So I'm curious to see how it'll work out.
Yeah, when you said about Fox, it's going to be really interesting to see how he plays on stage. We also have seen him play really good online, but when he played for SK Prime, he a little bit choked at stage in front of crowd, actually at one. But I can adapt. I can say that this thing might have been because of one of the players they had, Ziz or Halo, who is a little bit more crying baby when they start losing. So he might be affected from that. But yeah, in general, I'm really curious to see how What the Fox plays on stage. But I really have high hopes from what I've seen from SK until now, at least.
Alrighty. All right, well, we'll close out Europe with that. Just give everybody just kind of an impression of what to expect from EU LCS to come and where EU stands as far as infrastructure and coaching. But moving forward, I'd like to talk a little bit about OGN and the preseason games that we've seen, as far as how teams are performing, how the lineups are doing, and like what we can really expect from the OGN season. So the first question I want to pose to you guys is, how do you feel about these rosters compared to what they were last season? I mean, we've obviously had a lot of players leaving. How do you feel about it?
I mean, it's obviously a lot different. I don't really think it's difficult to take the rosters that are being played right now and compare them to last season, because teams are basically just trying out a lot of stuff, and like a lot of the teams, because they still have extra players, they're swapping people around. Like I know Faker didn't even play the other day, and like Easy Hoon was in, and everyone was just going to say
Easy Hoon played 2 games, so obviously this is all very experimental, and I kind of have
and then like KT, like my beloved KT, they have score jungling, which is like surprisingly okay. Like, you know, you kind of wake up to watch OGN at my time. It's like 4:00 in the morning. You're like, yeah, okay, see how bad my team is, and suddenly scores in the jungle, and you're like, what's going on? But he was actually able to provide a surprising amount of early map pressure, so I guess that was a pleasant surprise. Yeah, like I was really like impressed and kind of confused. So
apparently, scores were tearing it up in solo queue jungle too.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to have hope for KT because they always break my heart, but I guess like score jungle gave me hope. Najin and SKT are definitely still looking like, in my opinion, the two. Like, Najin has a really strong team going into this season. They have they're running Ambition.
Oh, at least on paper. At least on paper.
They still have Space as AD carry.
Space Prism?
Space Prism, the CJ Entus team.
In my opinion, Najin has the best AD carry over there right now in OQ. So and they're looking so good. Like they're going to be really good this year, I think.
Yeah, and I think Goom's performance in the mid lane especially was just really impressive, really consistent mid laner from what we've seen just in those two games. I mean, Ahri and Zed obviously not the most different champions, both kind of an assassin-y play style, but his Zed play was phenomenal. And his Ahri play, despite a rough start, he did come back, which I thought was really impressive and is not something we see a whole time in Korea, is mid laners coming back from a huge deficit like that.
Yeah.
So SKT is an organization that we've gotten excited about in the past, obviously season 3, and then season 4 kind of failed us. So Faker, assuming they play Faker 100% of the time, how do we feel about Peekaboo assuming that's how you pronounce it, in the bot lane, their support? I felt like he played pretty well. What did you guys see?
I like Peekaboo. I think he has a lot of talent. I think he made, particularly in the first day I saw him play, he made a few mistakes. But I mean, he generally had a pretty good attitude about it. Like, I don't think he let it kind of get to him. I think he's going to shape up to be a really good support player. Wolf was looking pretty all right. I mean,
pretty meh.
It's weird because, like, going into the season, I was like, oh yeah, Wolf, like, this is really his chance to step up, and then he's kind of just present in comparison to, I guess, my expectations. So maybe that's probably my fault, but I do like Peekaboo. I think there's going to be a little bit more of a competition for that spot than I previously thought.
Martin stepped up really a lot from SKT. At least in the first matches of the organization, he looked really scary in that top lane with Alessandra.
I wonder if it was the Lissandra pick being more his style, maybe, or if it was the play style of SKT T1. I mean, it's one team now, but T2 and T1 have very distinct play styles, and I wonder if playing with the other players on T1, like Faker, no, you didn't play with these, right? No, play with Faker first.
He played with Faker for the first set. Both games.
Well, he just looked more comfortable, I guess.
Yeah, but the other thing I want to keep in perspective here is that obviously Marin did play great, but we did see a ton of jungle pressure in that top lane. Like, we saw multiple Warwick ult ganks. I mean, and when you combine Warwick ult with Lissandra ult, it's pretty easy to snowball a lane. But that being said, I do think that solo lane ability and top lane, while being very important, is less important in this particular meta, just because of the team fight impact that every single top laner is looking to have between Maokai, between Gnar, between Lissandra. Every single one of those is about team fighting, is about having that map pressure outside of just top lane. But even then, Lissandra obviously has not the strongest early game, and Marin did play exceptionally well and got through, I think, the roughest part of Lissandra's game, which would be her early game, at least in my opinion.
He looks better than I've seen him in a really long time.
So we talked a little bit last week about ambition in the jungle and what we like, if this was good, if we were excited to see it. And Fly, you mentioned you kind of liked CJ's lineup. How did we feel about ambition in the jungle?
I overslept the batches.
That's okay.
Yeah, they're early in the morning over here, so like 10 a.m. for me. And I was still sleeping from trying to get myself to IEM schedule for San Jose, which were the more important matches for me. From what I saw, CGN just, at least the first two games that I've seen a little bit, CGN just controlled the map, controlled the vision, controlled in general the enemy, and just close out the games as soon as they got the lead back.
I wasn't pretty... so I should say I'm impressed, but I have really low expectations of ambition in general. Like, I always knew him as, like, the little flame in mid lane that fed. You know, like decent wave control, not quite on par with Flame, definitely not like the star player that team solid all around mid laner. And so his switch to jungle was a little surprising, but I will say like his greatest claim to fame right now is that first blood where he pretty much mechanically outplayed on Kha'Zix and I thought did really well, but he's not a bad jungler by any means. And I think that he has, you know, decent map control. And I think that the more time he gets in the role, the better he will be. Will he be a top Korean jungler? You know, I really don't know. I kind of doubt it, honestly.
In my opinion, I thought Score was a better jungler, but maybe that's just me.
It's a lot of people in the jungle. So no, Score actually did really well. I was avoiding that because I don't feel like I got to watch those games as in depth as I did a lot of the CJ games. But yeah.
Well, it's not even that he was like particularly mechanically impressive or anything. The only thing, I guess, and again, like it's one of those things where it's also my expectation level. So my expectation level for Score jungle is kind of like a giant question mark. And I guess the thing that I was the most impressed with is that he was able to actually create a lot of map pressure, which, I mean, he's been around for forever. Like the previously on Start Hill and then on the KT Bullets, it was him, Mappa, and Ryu. And so I feel like, I guess if Score has anything going for him, hopefully he'd be able to at least like command the respect and like corral the rest of the team, which is a good thing for a jungler to have in terms of like he communicates well with the rest of the team. So I don't like, that was the thing that impressed me the most, to be honest, was because typically when you see like a jungle shift, and like I remember Ryu's first games in the jungle, and like I just spent all this time talking about how much I love Ryu, but his first
as a mid laner, we said as a mid laner, we didn't say anything about his jungle career.
As his first games back in the jungle, because he did jungle on Start Hill. He didn't provide that same kind of presence, and like he did make some like obvious mechanical mistakes, but the more important thing for a jungler is like, how are you creating that pressure on your team? How are you making your presence known? How are you trying to snowball your lanes? How are you trying to, you know, like deny something from the opponent, controlling objectives, all that stuff. And Ryu just looked really kind of like sluggish in the jungle in his first couple of games, where Score just kind of was like, I'm going to be super aggressive and maybe it won't work out and maybe it will. But I thought that's kind of the right attitude that you have to have. Like they still had to worry about where Score was, which is important. So we'll see.
I like that review of his play. Like he did everything okay, and I guess they gave a shit about him, so he must have been doing something right. Like they didn't just not care about Score. So he played jungle pretty good. I guess that's what we can hope out of a jungler, is that people, you know, are inclined to worry about where he's at on the map.
Yeah, you have to worry about where the other jungler is. And like, for example, Bengi.
Oh god.
Maybe someone else wants to talk about that.
Well, the most impressive thing to me personally about Score Jungle was the fact that he drew a target ban in the first game. They banned Shaco against him, and that was his first competitive game as Jungle. So it was, yeah. I'm pretty sure they last banned Shaco in the first game, and I was like, oh, okay.
I don't remember them banning Shaco. I feel like I would, but I also like a lot of times missed some of these parts of those games. And if he did in fact get that respect ban, then obviously something is going on in scrims that, you know, he's doing something right. And
yeah, he drew Shaco ban.
Yeah.
The bans were LeBlanc, Warwick, Shaco.
And I mean, a Warwick ban is a general ban. We can't attribute that as a target ban, but
oh no, the Shaco was for sure.
And that's cool. I hate Shaco, so. You know, another one of those characters that I don't want to see in competitive play, kind of like Poppy. But yeah, I don't know. It's so odd to me that Shaco got banned. But I suppose if he's that good at it, it is a champion that has a lot of potential to snowball early leads and can split push. So I'm gonna close out Korea here just because I feel like these are preseason games and they aren't quite as meaningful as the actual season games. Once you know lineups are finalized for each evening and they don't swap players out between games, I think we can get a lot better impression of what to expect from these teams. And I think that these initial ones actually did a surprisingly good job, you know, with Najin and SKT on the top. I'd like to turn attention to kind of the core of this show, which is going to be talking about IEM San Jose, you know, our most recent international tournament. Obviously, everybody's region was present here. So let's start by talking a little bit about Unicorns of Love versus Lion Gaming. And I know this isn't a match that too many of us are familiar with, but let's at least go over it sort of briefly.
Well, a short thing about that match is Lion knew how to ban better than TSM versus Unicorns of Love.
They banned Syndra.
Yeah, they banned Syndra. They looked at his rank stats.
And then banned Thresh. They banned Thresh. They banned Pantheon.
Mm-hmm.
They banned Poppy.
They did the simple method of looking at their picks bans on Esportspedia.
And
yeah, man, they took a leaf out of the book from Worlds, man. But the only team that banned well against the Lions was not from the bigger nations as such, you know, the bigger regions. Sorry.
And I think one of the things that does is give Lion a lot of credit as far as an organization that respects, you know, every tournament they enter. And I think we see this a lot from Brazilian teams too, is that they put a lot of weight on competing internationally. And so when they're getting ready for an international tournament, they very much take it seriously. Whereas more established teams like TSM, you know, Alliance, Cloud9, maybe not taking the tournament quite as seriously and not quite as worried about their first round opponents, which is really huge credit to Lion for that. I think having a good pick ban phase is huge and is something that a lot of teams still do really, really poorly.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think.
Oh. No, sorry.
No.
I was.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just move on because I don't think there's a whole lot to say here. I think that Lion was pretty outclassed despite having a decent pick ban phase, and I think that Unicorns of Love, maybe not their best series of games, but definitely. I mean, it might be their best series of games. They kind of crushed them. So let's just jump right.
They didn't. Like Lion gave more.
Lion gave more opposition than TSM ever did.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Power of Evil never killed their mid laner 1-on-1.
Yeah, that's actually
mid
pretty.
Mid laner's also not Bjergsen, so that has a lot of things going for it right there, and that's speaks pretty well to me.
Well, we can say like Lion Gaming had their captain and in-game leader not playing at the event. They had two.
Yeah, they had.
They had two subs.
Yeah,
they played with Maple Street and their support. So, yeah, in general, they played with subs and still gave a fight to Unicorns. Like, Unicorns was in control of the whole game, but still, Lion didn't give up that easily against Unicorns.
Yeah, okay. And I'm starting to see what you're saying there, and that alone, I guess when you compare it to their performance against TSM, I guess Lion did in fact put up a better fight than TSM, which is kind of salt in the wound for TSM fans. Although I don't know if they would take that seriously or not.
I think the big difference was over there was the pick and ban phase rather than anything else. Like Unicorns actually gave, like we're gonna talk in a bit about it in the TSM discussion, but Unicorns just didn't use the maximum potential out of their picks against Lion. And on top of that, Lion banned and picked stuff that was comfortable from Unicorn's side. So, yeah. And in general, throughout this tournament, I think Unicorns was really dependent on their comfortable picks rather than anything else. But we can discuss that later.
Of course. So let's move on to Cloud9 versus Pain Gaming. 2-0 for Cloud9. Some surprises here. Some people were hoping for 2-1 or maybe even a win for Pain Gaming. Emily, why don't you tell us a little bit about this series?
I was not actually expecting Pain Gaming to take the series. But I do love Pain Gaming, and they unfortunately I think they definitely did not play as well as I've seen them play. And that's not to say like they were obviously up against superior competition, but that was not all of it. Like they definitely did not play up to the level that they are able to. I think they might have been a bit nervous. I know they Kami, their mid laner, kind of made a statement that I really liked where he kind of admitted they were off in the first game, and a lot of it was because they were reacting a lot to what Cloud9 was doing instead of kind of calculating what they needed to do to get ahead. I still think they showed that their team fighting is still pretty good. I mean, it's sad because like they didn't show what they're capable of on this stage, unfortunately. And for a Brazilian team, sometimes that's like the only stage that they get in the eyes of the West when people are looking at Brazil. So that did make me sad. But I guess the thing that pains specifically, and I think is interesting when they go to international competitions, the thing that Pain specifically and Cloud9 have in common, in my opinion, and you can feel free to disagree, but in my mind, Cloud9 is better than the rest of NA. And I feel that they occupy a spot that's slightly better than the other North American teams, to the point where last year, there were parts of last year where they were just steamrolling everybody. And Pain Gaming sometimes occupies that same position in Brazil, where like even though I would argue that they had a slight slow start in the IEM qualifiers, the tournament to get them here, they did just kind of like rip through qualifiers with very little opposition. So they are better than where the rest of Brazil is, but they don't get the same kind of international experience that Cloud9 has had. So I mean, this tournament, I think there are a couple of them saying that they will take a lot of the experience back. They were really sad that they couldn't play better. It's kind of up in the air as to what's going to happen to this team because their Korean bot lane, which is actually formerly the Midas Vio bot lane, they are likely leaving soon. Well,
to be honest, their bot lane played pretty weak at that event. And seeing, like, to be honest, Kami played out of his mind in those matches versus Cloud9. He had amazing performance considering, yeah.
He's a really good player. Like, I mean, I know people aren't going to believe me when I say this, but like I went into the match and I was like, actually, I like Kami better than Hai just based on like lane to lane matchup. And I know I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for this because obviously, like in other people's minds, that's not exactly what happened between these two teams. But Kami is a very, very good player. And yeah, that's all I want to say.
Well, he showed up really a lot at IEM San Jose. Like I know the Kami in person from previous IEMs and previous events we've met. But the whole Pain Gaming lineup, they almost beat Fnatic in one IEM summit like 2 years ago, year and a half or something of the sort. I respect them, but as you said, like except a couple of IEMs and maybe some different events, they don't have much international experience. And to be honest, the other minus that we had in Europe and NA is at one point when you become the really, really good team is you don't have people to practice and improve to get even better than that. And that's especially the case for Pain Gaming because in Brazil, sorry, but I don't consider the scene. I love the scene, but I think they don't have that much of a good teams. And considering they try to implement, I think their big mistake is trying to implement mediocre, low-tier Koreans just because they're Koreans into their teams. I personally don't agree with those.
I do like Lacti and Nala on that team. I think Winged and Suno were very good, or Winged anyway, when he was on Kate Stars. Not as sure about Reset and Shadow, who were on previously Team 58, and then they're leaving now from Kaboom Black. But it depends on what happens this season. I think this season's, and I can't say a lot about it, but I think this season's going to be really interesting for Brazil. I think what they really do need is a regular, like, just start with like regular offline play where they have to play each other in a competitive environment every week. And like an LCS, like it doesn't even have to be LCS format because they already said it's going to be CBLOL, but like that's, I think, what at least will start to improve some of the other teams. Because you're right, like Pain's on top, and then it's like Cade and Kaboom, and then the rest of the teams was what it was. This previously it was CNB, but this year they have a completely different roster. So we'll see.
I mean, we will see. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is you mentioned earlier how you feel like Cloud9 is in their own separate bracket as far as NA teams go. And one of the things I feel like has been against Cloud9 a lot in the past, and part of the reason why they did so well in this tournament, is it's not the best of one format. And I think Cloud9's playstyle and their adaptability, similar to Pain's playstyle and Pain's adaptability, despite the fact that Pain didn't really show up in this event, has been excellent for them in these best of threes, best of five scenario, because despite the fact that they may start out with early deficits, they can turn that around, and they have multiple opportunities to turn that around, even if it's not in that game. So let's skip ahead a little bit to Alliance versus C9. How do you feel like C9 played in this game? What do you think went wrong for Alliance? How did it go?
Well, I don't think Froggen should be playing Xerath. He didn't he counterpick himself in the pickman phase, if I recall correctly?
I think he picked up the Xerath just to deny the other team picking Jace.
Okay.
I think that was the whole idea of the Xerath. At least that's the only reasonable explanation why he picked up Xerath so early. Mm-hmm. They didn't ban Jace, and I think Jace is a really high priority pick right now in the mid lane. And Xerath is one of the few champions that can play against Jace in lane.
He wasn't picked at all this tournament, if I recall correctly.
Which is, I don't know, that's... The picks and bans from that tournament are a little bit weird compared to what you usually see right now.
And I think that a lot of that is because teams have not gotten a chance to play against each other internationally. Teams have not gotten really the experience. And I mean, we know that scrims for a lot of teams are about getting a comfortable roster, not figuring out, new champions or diversifying champion pools, which I think a lot of people haven't picked up Jace yet, which I could in the long run be disastrous. And one thing that I did really like about this Cloud9 lineup is this is a combo that we see a lot. We see that Fizz mid lane with that Lissandra top, and it gives you just so much pick potential and so much team fighting. And I love watching this team fight play. Obviously, it doesn't always work, but it was really excellent on them to pick that into this quirky Xerath poke comp, with that Soraka backup. Just to make it a really hard team to break. But when you have that Fizz and you have that Lissandra, it becomes much easier to break into that front line and to just CC down those squishier poke champs like Xerath and Corki.
One thing in those series that surprised me a lot is how high priority Soraka support was for both of the teams, which makes no sense. Yes, Soraka is good, but it's really situational pick to counter the other lane. And especially, I think one of the games they picked Soraka and they lane swapped, which makes no sense. Like, Soraka is bad in lane swaps. The idea of Soraka is to counter champions like Janna and which else? Yeah, pretty much Janna and one other support.
Is it Nami by any chance or Morgana?
I think Nami more. It's Nami, Janna, and those utility supportive. And it's simply to outplay in the 2v2 situation because you're going to have an AD carry that can consistently... No, it's not Nami because she has the heal too. It's more Janna because he has the shield, but he can't heal and sustain the AD carry. So your AD carry with Soraka can trade as much as he wants, and he's still going to be on high HP. Because of the Soraka sustain.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. So we saw Cloud9 consistently, well, not consistently, but get behind a little bit in a couple of these matches. And I know, Fly, you mentioned in our pre-show call that this was the only set that you saw where every single game, the team that won initially started the behind. And why do you think that happened with these two teams? What about their play styles or what about their play in those games allowed for these comebacks?
I think for Alliance, first was their first competitive match with Recklessin. They had a lot to prove to the community, so they were a little bit playing more around Reckless to make him show a little bit. The other thing is, I think, except that Lissandra play on Froggen, I don't think Froggen showed up for those series. I don't think his play, especially in the first game, was anywhere close to his level. The Warwick pick from Shook was really questionable. I don't like the Warwick pick at all. I don't know. I think it's way too easy to counter and get used to. Maybe one game you can lose versus him, like Cloud9 did, but we saw right after you could easily adapt against the Warwick. It's not a consistent priority pick as they made it look like. And it felt like Alliance is not really confident with their picks and what they want to play. I've heard rumors they've had really bad scrims against the NA teams while they were over there. So that might be the reason why they weren't super confident with going with picks they wanted to. So, yeah, and it's just both teams in those series played swappy, to be honest.
Yeah, and the fact that someone came back and the fact that they didn't just hold on to those gold leads kind of lends itself to that. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this series, this Alliance versus C9?
I think it was said like before the series even began, like a lot of people were saying about Froggen wasn't too confident about playing and stuff. So it was probably in their heads before the game even began that they weren't going to win, which is never good enough. Like, I would say at least like 50-60% of the time, games are lost before they even begin. If that's in your head, you know, if it's in your head that you're not playing well and the other team's doing well from scrims or whatever, then that can have a major effect on the series, you know.
And there's the other thing is they just came after Worlds. They did lineup changes. Alliance is like their mentality, their problems they had with Reckless contract. I don't know if you guys saw the interview with Reckless. That was from ESL. He looked pale. He looked tired. I don't think like a lot of the casters said how important is for those teams the IEM event and everything. I don't think so. Like, I think those teams just went there for their fans and just to play and see how they feel on the new patch. I don't think it was priority event for any of the teams. We've seen Froggen and those people in the Watchstick office, they've streamed more than they scrimmed, I believe. Okay, that's not actually true. They scrimmed the same amount, but I don't think they try harder that much in that event, and I don't see it as priority event for any of the teams. Like, any normal LCS team right now is looking forward to what they can use for the LCS and how they're going to perform in the LCS. So testing out picks, testing out strategies, seeing how they feel, how they come from behind, etc., can be something that those teams wanted to try out.
Okay. So with that in mind, do you think that played a role in TSM's loss versus Unicorns of Love? I love Power of Evil. I'm gonna grin like a jackass this entire segment because I love that kid, and obviously their top laner. Their whole team looked amazing in this series. I love them. But that being said, let's get started. Let's talk TSM versus Unicorns of Love in the semifinals. For those of you who don't know, Swift 2-0 for Unicorn. No, not Swift, but a 2-0 for Unicorns of Love. A pretty clean 2-0. Let's talk about the series.
This is a Swift one.
What happened? Why did the NA, the gods of NA, the proverbial community gods of NA, TSM, get shut down by Unicorns of Love? Like, what happened in the pick ban phase? Talk to me about the games. Talk to me about the players' individual performance. What happened?
They didn't prep. I'm pretty sure they didn't even look up like Power of Evil's like ranked stats or what he played in competitive. They let him get his like best champions. They just looked sloppy overall. Like, every lane looked pretty sloppy.
I'd agree with that, man. I don't think they took the game too serious in the preparation phase, at least, you know. Like, a lot of people underestimate UL, right? They think they're silly because of the name and blah, blah, blah. I don't know much about them, but Powell's a really good mid laner, and Chachi's a really good top laner. So straight off the bat, you've got like two of the best in Europe. Kiki's isn't bad. He's been around since season 1. He's been playing a long time. He's got quite a diverse champion pool, as you've seen. You know, he can pull out some pretty tricky picks, albeit a bit cheesy, but he's got them in his locker. Hylissang's pretty good. He lands some decent hooks and stuff.
Fresh.
Yeah. I wouldn't say Vardags is the greatest, but I mean he's okay.
Vardagas, you mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Like Kikis, when we mention him right now, I've actually managed him. Kikis is an amazing player, and his attitude is also amazing. He's open to trying out new stuff, listening to advice and everything. But his big problem, and we actually saw it in that tournament, is he's not really consistent with his play. He has one match that he plays outstanding good, which we saw versus TSM. And then you had the Cloud9 series in which he was there, but he made so much questionable players. So yeah, I think in general he's too much inconsistent. It depends which Kikis we see in the match. And about Chachi and Power of Evil, obviously amazing player, especially Chachi is, I would say, could be and would be one of the top laners in Europe. So I'm really a fan of Chachi, actually. Their bot lane, Hylissang, even being fellow Bulgarian, from what I've seen, he plays mainly Thresh, and outside of that, he gets out of his comfort zone. And let's be short about that. TSM versus Unicorns of Love. It was TSM got outpicked, outbanned. They got outplayed in every single lane. They got surprised by picks. And on top of that, Unicorns of Love played in a way that they, especially in the first game, that they didn't really give any chance to Santorin to do anything in the lanes. We've discussed it before the show. A lot of people actually gave a lot of shit to Santorin for playing bad. He didn't play bad. He played the best of his whole team in those series, to be honest. He kept them in the game without steals of dragons, and they forced him into playing a Nunu, which, hey, it's freaking Nunu. What do you expect to do with a Nunu when your team is doing nothing? And to be honest, the only bad play we saw from Santorin for the 2 games was that jumping on Baron, but at that point, the game was already over pretty much, and he just wanted to try and see if he can maybe steal with his drop the Baron, but he was a little bit late with that.
Besides,
I didn't see all the Santorin hate, but I just thought he by far played the best on that team in that set.
Didn't he steal like 3 dragons just like in that entire series? 2?
I believe 2. One of them was between 1v2 versus the Pantheon and something else.
Right.
And he even stole the dragon 1v2 and even escaped after that.
Yeah, I remember that now. I think there was 3 people on dragon. He walks in as Nunu, takes it, and walks out.
Yeah, but the big part of those games, especially the first one was, and even the second one, it's not especially the first, it was pretty much Unicorns getting all their comfortable picks, and on top of that, getting surprising picks. Like that LeBlanc versus Serret was a freaking favorite pick for Power of Evil. Like, LeBlanc destroys Serret unless you make some crazy plays or you have a good day and a little bit of luck. And that Twisted Fate, well, we see it in solo queue the whole time right now, so that's enough said. But yeah, both games was pretty much decided in the picks, and then TSM just lost it early game, and which led to Unicorns just playing it perfect. And holy hell, that's Vizichachi ultimate with the Gnar. It's out of his hand.
That's so good.
The flash Gnar ult, that was so good.
All right. Well, we can agree that the Gnar was good, and that obviously Power of Evil crushed Bjergsen in the mid lane. Let's all be a little excited. Power of Evil. Moving forward, their final set against Cloud9, we kind of saw a different side of Unicorns of Love. Not quite so in command, not quite such a good pick ban phase coming out from them. You mentioned in the past that their jungler has kind of an issue with consistency, and this is kind of a set where we didn't really see him show up. Walk me through this one. Tell me what Cloud9 did well and where Unicorns of Love went wrong.
Unicorns played Warwick. No, like Cloud9 at that time was already confident. Unicorns have beaten TSM, and I think their goal was achieved for the event. Like, they went out there, hey, let's try. If we win, we win. If we don't, hey, we beat a TSM. We made people talk about us. Goal achieved for this event. And after the first game, they started picking up stuff that's more safe, that's more reactionary to Cloud9. So they pretty much gave Cloud9 the lead, and Cloud9 did what they do best. They just controlled the map. They did those exchanges. We saw Sneaky doing like his usual lane push, taking turrets, inhibitors, while Unicorns is trying to do something, just something, and they didn't actually know how to react to those Cloud9 maneuvers we've seen. So yeah, I think it was just Cloud9 playing really good and Unicorns playing it safe and trying to react to Cloud9 do, which you don't let Cloud9 dictate your game. Never. Even Samsung Blue didn't.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big weaknesses is when you're coming up against a giant, kind of like this giant name in esports, and definitely in NA, and I think worldwide now, Cloud9. You really have to be confident in your pick bans because Cloud9 has always been that team to pick people apart and to outpick ban. I mean, they're the only team, like in their very beginning, they were the only team to run Ashe Zyra, and they pretty much decided when to have team fights, and that whole split they crushed because teams didn't know how to play against that, and a lot of the reason they did so well is because other teams let them dictate pick ban. And obviously Unicorns of Love doesn't quite have the amount of international experience that Cloud9 does, and probably let them get away with that when they shouldn't. But then at the same time, we saw Cloud9 steadily improving over the course of the tournament. That's something we've all kind of agreed on. They started off maybe not so confident, looking a little sloppy, and definitely in their Alliance series, didn't look like they had it quite together. And then going up against Unicorns of Love, who admittedly may not be as good as Alliance, but are pretty darn good. They crushed and they played incredibly well, dominant in pick ban, dominant through every stage of the game, I would even say, and an excellent performance, a swift 3-0 for Cloud9.
Yeah.
Does anyone else? Go ahead.
Okay. No, I would say nothing else I could say about that series.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add about IEM San Jose?
Not too much. I don't think it was an event that had a large amount of insight, other than enforcing the fact that just because Warwick is a solo queue terror doesn't necessarily mean he's visible and competitive player. But
don't pick Warwick ever. Love Emily.
He got nerfed anyway, ladies and gentlemen, so he's even worse than he was before, and teams that were tempted to pick him probably won't now anyway. Yay, my solo queue stats. Thank God Warwick is gone.
My favorite Warwick game is still going to be that Masters match where Cacao picked Warwick when he wasn't popular. It was like a show match, and he would just run, do infinite duress, and then walk away laughing while his teammates would die.
Okay.
That was the only time I liked it.
Yeah, the best Warwick game, but it's just Cacao being awesome. I miss Cacao. All right. So let's talk about the next IEM tournament coming up. Let's talk about IEM Cologne. Obviously, we have someone on here whose team is going to be competing soon. Roccat is going to be competing there with their new, mid laner Ryu, who we've confirmed is not bad after a little bit of earlier discussion in the show. So let's start with Fly. What do you expect from this tournament?
Win.
Huh?
As simple as that. Like, I believe we have quite a good chance of winning the event. Of course, we're not going to underestimate everyone, but our goal for the event is actually going there and showing what we're capable Ryu has his motivation, of course, to show that he's not a bad mid laner. Overpower needs to show people how good he can be in top lane. Anyone that criticized him moving from mid to top lane. And hey, we have the Rookie of the Year from last year, Woolite. So he needs to show why he won that award and why we picked him up. So we have what to prove over there. I won't lie, it's not a priority event for us, but we're really excited to show what we can do over there. And we're really excited. IEM has always been an amazing event to be at. We've seen the crowds at Katowice. So it's being traveling to an event is something that most of the LCS teams miss lately, since we don't get to travel that much to events. So yeah, we're excited for the event, and we're gonna give our best over there to show people that we can be good. And we, of course, Europe NA. No.
Well, speaking of NA, we've talked a little bit about Counterlogic Gaming, and I don't really want to talk about them anymore because I'm skeptical. But Dignitas imported 2 Koreans in the theme of Koreans migrating. Not ones we've heard of, though, unlike China. Maybe they can't spend enough. But with Gamsu and Core JJ now on the lineup, how do you think Dignitas, what do you think their chances are? Do you think they'll be meeting you in the finals? Do you think they'll be meeting Roccat in the finals for everyone else too, not just Fly? How do you think they're going to do?
Well, I was going to say, this is actually one of the teams, like, aside from getting to watch Ryu play again, I'm really interested to see how these two do on the Dignitas team. Gamsu was a sub for Samsung Blue, and then he was previously on, I think, like, Alienware Arena, if I remember correctly. And I think Core is a pretty solid AD carry. He and Hui, who is on Fusion now, were kind of the bright spots of their team back when they were on Big File Miracle. So I'm really curious to see how they both do. Like, just being it sounds really weird, but just being a sub for a Samsung team kind of speaks well. Like, their scouting is usually very good. I've enjoyed a lot of their subs. Like, I still think Gunza, who's a former sub for them, he went to see Jantis and then he left. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing where he goes, because I think he's quite good. I think, didn't Peekaboo, he was a sub for them for a little bit before he went to SKT, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
So I'm really curious, because I want to see what Gamsu can do. I want to see if, like, I guess the core Kiwi kid bot lane's going to be kind of weird, but Core is a really fun kid, so I'm looking forward to seeing him play as well.
No more Kiwi Pie.
No more Cutie Pie. RIP. He's now playing in exciting tournaments like the Omen Encounter that I'm not at all excited about because I was shoutcasting it. I'm genuinely excited because it's interesting.
What's that? Sorry?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing significant. Shout outs to sponsors and stuff. Yay. Bring me back. Hire me. Pay me. All right. Any other teams we're really excited about? Gambit Gaming Moscow 5. We get to see new Gambit Gaming versus new Moscow 5.
New Moscow 5.
They're not really Moscow 5 in my hearts.
Yeah.
Gambit Gaming's not really Gambit Gaming in my heart either. This looks like a mess.
Taboo chart. Yay.
At least they have some of their retaining numbers.
Wait, I did like Capo Chart. That is fair. I forgot that he was on Gambit. I don't know. I don't know if there's too much more to say about IEM. Honestly, it's another one of these tournaments that I think, like Fly has been talking about, teams aren't necessarily putting their biggest effort into, because this is just kind of testing ground for them. Mm-hmm. And, it's not the LCS. There's no implications towards Worlds. There's no implication of whether or not they qualify the LCS. They're in the LCS and they're safe. And that's where I think teams are going to focus their attention, not necessarily a smaller event like IEM, despite the fact that I'm sure you're eager to win, or Roccat is eager to win. I'm excited to see what happens. Does anyone else have anything I'd like to add about IEM Cologne?
it's just going to be an interesting test of CLG, whether or not the new support staff is able to fix their bad habits. I mean, it's mostly the same team, so.
It is mostly the same team, and I think Zion's part in the top lane will be curious, and we will, despite the fact that ThinkCard is in the jungle, we will get to see a little bit of how their play style has shifted. Obviously not 100% for the new season without Xmithie there, but we'll see something, and that's more than we've seen from CLG in a long time. So it'll be interesting. Aces High Esports Club is the one-time team we haven't talked to about. For those of you who don't know who they are, it's a lot of former members from Dark Passage. Holy Phoenix, their AD carry, is known for being the best AD carry in Turkey. Unfortunately, that doesn't give him a whole ton of world credibility at this point. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We had some power issues and then a blue screen. And, well, here we are now to close out this wonderful show as Steven is on the wrong overlay setting from what it would appear from the stream. But, okay, I assume people can hear my voice, so we'll just go with it. There we go. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching. Stepping over my own words. Kind of a average length show tonight. Thank you to Emily, John, and Steven for being excellent panelists as always. And a special thank you to Fly over here for pretty much single-handedly teaching me more about EU than I've ever known. Thanks to Roccat for keeping him on and for offering to let him come on tonight. It's absolutely awesome. Really looking forward to seeing your team play at IEM Cologne. For those of you who enjoyed the show, make sure you can check us out here every Tuesday night around 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Hitbox TV/Paravine, or on Twitter at Paravine Network. We will give you all the information about going live on there. Make sure to follow this wonderful panel on Twitter for more insight from Fly, Steven, Emily, John, and myself. Thanks everyone so much for watching. Have an excellent evening.
Bye.